My next guest is truly what?
First guest.
What did I say?
Next guest.
And you corrected me in front of millions of people.
Most people remember Johnny Carson as the easygoing king of late night, cracking jokes and making celebrities feel comfortable. But behind that charming smile was a man who wielded more power in Hollywood than most studio executives, and he wasn't afraid to use it. 7 guests discovered this the hard way when they crossed lines that resulted in permanent exile from the most important stage in television. What makes these bands fascinating isn't just the celebrity drama. It's what they reveal about Carson's true personality and the calculated way he protected his empire. These weren't emotional reactions or temporary feuds. They were strategic business decisions that sent shockwaves through Hollywood and established rules that every celebrity had to follow if they wanted access to America's living rooms. Tonight, we're diving into the untold stories behind these banishments, including security footage that captured one star's threatening behavior, the elaborate trap Carson set for a famous psychic, and the single comment that guaranteed one comedian would never sit in that guest chair again. By the end, you'll understand why Carson's power extended far beyond comedy and how he used these bands to maintain control over an industry that depended on his approval. The first ban reveals Carson's most dangerous quality, his ability to plan revenge while maintaining his public image. In 1973, when psychic Uri Geller was scheduled to appear, Carson saw an opportunity that had nothing to do with entertainment and everything to do with his personal mission to expose fraud. Carson's hatred of fake psychics traced back to his childhood fascination with magic tricks. He knew every technique, every sleight of hand, every method that con artists used to fool audiences. When Geller's people contacted the show about demonstrating spoon-bending and mind-reading abilities, Carson didn't just book him, he declared war. The key detail that most people don't know is that Carson spent weeks preparing for this appearance. He contacted James Randi, the famous skeptic, and together they designed what can only be described as an elaborate trap. Randi provided untouched props, sealed the items himself, and even supplied restaurant-grade silverware that had never been in Geller's possession. Carson's prop master Bobby Quinn secured everything until showtime, ensuring Geller couldn't prepare or tamper with anything. But here's where Carson's genius becomes clear. He didn't reveal his preparation to the audience. Instead, he played the role of curious host, building anticipation by saying, "Tonight, we'll bend some minds, maybe even some metal." The audience expected a spectacular demonstration. Carson expected something very different. When Geller entered, radiating confidence and perfectly groomed, Carson calmly requested he identify concealed drawings in sealed envelopes. What followed was 18 minutes of the most uncomfortable television ever broadcast. Geller pressed papers against his forehead, eyes shut, clearly struggling. "I feel drained," he mumbled weakly. The audience's enthusiasm faded with each passing second. Carson waited patiently, then presented the spoon. Nothing happened. Geller's frustration mounted as he blamed studio conditions, hostile energy, even lunar phases. But Carson remained courteous while delivering gentle barbs. When Geller continued making excuses, Carson said with perfect timing, "We'll give you as much time as you need in the next life." The audience erupted in laughter. Geller's face turned crimson. Post-show, Carson made his verdict clear to producers. "We exposed him as a fraud on national television. No return invitation would ever be issued." This wasn't about entertainment. It was about Carson's personal war against deception. The ban became permanent studio policy, and Carson implemented new guest guidelines requiring that any paranormal demonstrations use Tonight Show-supplied props. The aftermath reveals Carson's calculating nature. Thousands of viewer letters poured in, half applauding the exposure, half criticizing Carson's approach. Geller's other bookings actually increased, as he claimed NBC had sabotaged him. Carson responded angrily to his staff. "We revealed his lies and made him wealthy, but never again here." This ban established Carson's reputation as someone who could smile at you while systematically destroying your credibility. It sent a message to every future guest. Don't try to fool the man who built his career on understanding exactly how people get fooled. The second ban shows what happened when Carson's ego, carefully hidden behind decades of self-deprecating humor, finally erupted. Chevy Chase's 1978 appearance started as routine celebrity promotion, but ended with a comment that guaranteed his permanent exile and revealed Carson's true feelings about his position in Hollywood. Chase arrived as Saturday Night Live's breakout star and foul play's box office draw. His success had clearly gone to his head, and Carson, who had been observing celebrities for decades, immediately recognized the warning signs. The trouble started when Chase opened by flaunting box office numbers. 10 million in 3 days. Pretty impressive for a weekend, right? Then, gesturing toward Carson's workspace, he remarked, "You've got quite the comfortable little operation here." The audience chuckled, but backstage crew witnessed Carson's expression tighten noticeably. Chase had just made his first mistake, suggesting that Carson's 15-year empire was merely a comfortable little operation. But Chase wasn't finished. He immediately claimed ownership of the guest area, ignoring Carson's standard prompts about his new movie, and instead launching into stories about celebrity encounters at LAX. When Carson tried to redirect the conversation, Chase targeted his host's notorious golf obsession. "I could probably outdrive you, maybe even out-host you, too." The studio fell into uncomfortable silence. Carson smiled diplomatically, but the damage was done. During the commercial break, instead of using the time to recover, Chase continued his assault. He boasted about upcoming projects while suggesting he'd provide contact information for NBC when they needed fresher talent at 11:30. That comment sealed his fate. Carson listened silently, pencil tapping rhythmically against his desk, mentally finalizing Chase's blacklist status. After the show, he confronted executive producer Peter Lasalle with rare fury. 15 years building this institution, and some kid suggests he deserves my position. He's finished here. The ban took immediate effect, and Hollywood quickly learned the lesson. Talent agents stopped returning Chase's calls. When Chase launched his Fox late-night show in 1992, reporters inquired about Carson's guidance. Chase acknowledged receiving no communication whatsoever. No phone calls, no correspondence, no public endorsement, only meaningful silence. When the Chevy Chase show failed after 5 chaotic weeks, Tonight Show veterans exchanged knowing glances. The 14-year ban had held firm and would continue through Carson's retirement. Carson's unspoken rule was clear: mock the throne, and you'll never occupy it. This ban reveals Carson's most protected secret. Beneath the humble, self-deprecating exterior was a man who viewed himself as irreplaceable and would ruthlessly eliminate anyone who suggested otherwise. The third ban demonstrates how Carson's charm could instantly transform into cold calculation when someone threatened his physical safety. Wayne Newton's 1980 confrontation remains the most dramatic example of Carson's zero-tolerance policy toward intimidation. The conflict started with typical Carson humor. During his monologue, he joked, "Las Vegas is installing brighter stage lights. Wayne Newton's hair needs photosynthesis." Audiences roared with laughter, but Newton, who had invested millions in purchasing the Aladdin Hotel, saw the joke as an attack on his carefully crafted image. What happened next was captured on NBC security footage that has never been publicly released. Newton arrived unannounced at Burbank during taping day, striding purposefully down corridors, silk shirt unbuttoned, fists clenched. Security cameras tracked his movement as he made his way to Carson's office during a routine card review session. According to eyewitness accounts, Newton burst through the door and delivered an ultimatum. "Mr. Carson, these jokes about me will stop, and they'll stop now, or I will kick your ass." The threat was direct, physical, and made in front of multiple witnesses. Carson's response was immediate and decisive. He contacted security while Newton was still in the building. "Wayne Newton is prohibited from this facility," he commanded. The blacklist was instantaneous and absolute. Carson never publicized the threat, but confided to close associates, "Nobody, absolutely nobody, intimidates me in my own studio." The aftermath shows Carson's methodical approach to eliminating threats. Newton's name vanished from all future booking considerations. NBC Security received memorandums featuring Newton's photograph and explicit instructions for his permanent exclusion. That evening's script was edited to eliminate every Newton reference, not from fear, but from policy. Carson had determined that anyone resorting to physical intimidation forfeited their network television privileges forever. The ban sent a clear message throughout the entertainment industry. Carson's studio was his kingdom, and threatening the king meant permanent exile. Years later, when asked about the incident, Carson's response was characteristically understated. "Some people forget that television is a business, not a playground." But his actions spoke louder than his words. Newton never appeared on The Tonight Show again, and his Las Vegas career never recovered from losing access to Carson's platform. The fourth ban reveals Carson's intolerance for guests who treated his show like their personal advertising platform. Bob Hope's permanent exile demonstrates how even legendary status couldn't protect celebrities who violated Carson's standards for authentic entertainment. Hope seemed perfect for television. NBC executives labeled him sponsor gold. But this entertainment royalty arrived in Burbank carrying index cards that would ultimately terminate his Tonight Show appearances. Hope's preparation process involved thick packets delivered beforehand, containing prepared jokes, suggested questioning strategies, product endorsements, and even preferred camera angles for reaction shots. For Carson, whose brilliance emerged from improvised responses, this felt like receiving sheet music at a jazz session. During filming, Hope barely acknowledged Johnny, instead focusing on cue cards positioned near camera lenses, waiting for Carson's setup to deliver predetermined punchlines. The breaking point arrived during a 1978 visit when Hope managed to mention Texaco 3 times within 7 minutes. Carson quipped, "Texaco receives more screen time than I do," but afterward delivered an ultimatum to producers. "I won't conduct infomercials disguised as interviews." Carson's patience had boundaries, and Hope had crossed them. Internal memos document Carson successfully campaigning for Hope's permanent removal. "He's not performing television," Carson argued. "He's reciting commercials with canned laughter." When NBC initially objected, citing Hope's revenue-generating specials, Carson threatened to quit if forced to endure more scripted discussions. The network surrendered immediately. Hope received no official notification, just gradually absent booking opportunities that extended indefinitely. Staff observed that Carson's dressing room atmosphere normalized once Hope's ban took effect. The precedent was established. Authenticity wasn't optional, and even legends faced exile for treating The Tonight Show like personal advertising space. The fifth ban shows how Carson's television instincts trumped political correctness when a guest's behavior became toxic for the show's environment. Don Rickles' permanent exclusion wasn't about his insult comedy. It was about his inability to control the chaos he created. Rickles' machine gun insults thrilled viewers, but the mayhem he left behind eventually cost him his spot. His approach was to attack before anyone could defend, shredding guests, audience members, even Carson himself, then grinning like a kid who'd smashed a window. The fatal incident occurred in 1976, when Rickles was guest hosting during Carson's vacation. Between interviews, he grabbed Johnny's treasured walnut cigarette box, a gift from a stagehand who'd once saved Carson from a studio fire, and accidentally smashed the lid while riffing to the crowd. Carson's public response became legendary. The next night, he marched onto the adjacent CPO Sharkey set with cameras in tow, confronting Rickles with, "You broke my box." The audience howled, and NBC replayed the clip for years. But off-camera, Carson was taking inventory of Rickles' pattern of destruction. The comedian ignored timing lights, derailed segments, demolished props, and pushed jokes past what censors had approved. The broken box became shorthand for a larger problem. When Rickles ridiculed an overweight audience member in 1985, triggering hundreds of complaint letters, Carson had seen enough. Hilarious, yes. Radioactive, too, Carson told his producers before issuing a lifetime ban. The two men remained courteous at industry parties, but Studio One's door stayed locked. Stagehands joked they no longer needed danger pay. No more flying ashtrays or wounded egos. The sixth ban demonstrates Carson's recognition that some personalities, no matter how beloved, simply couldn't function in late-night television's rhythm. Fred Rogers' appearance seemed guaranteed to warm hearts until it became a ratings catastrophe that convinced Carson some guests were incompatible with his format. Rogers' entrance immediately revealed the tempo mismatch. He paused center stage, offered a modest wave, and spoke in his characteristic measured Pittsburgh rhythm. "Thank you very much, friends. I'm very glad to be here." The applause continued because the floor crew couldn't determine if he'd completed his greeting. Every planned comedic beat shifted 30 seconds behind schedule. Rogers delivered patient, measured responses with 2-second pauses between thoughts. Perfect for preschoolers. Devastating for 11:45 p.m. programming. When Carson attempted an icebreaker about wearing sneakers in Rogers' honor, the response killed the momentum. "That's very thoughtful, Johnny. Sneakers can help us feel ready to play." Post-broadcast analysis was devastating. Nielsen data revealed a 3-point audience decline during Rogers' segment. Carson decided that evening, Fred Rogers embodies sainthood, but saints don't succeed in late night. The ban wasn't personal, it was professional preservation. The seventh ban illustrates Carson's impatience with guests who treated interviews like personal lecture platforms. Charlton Heston's permanent removal shows how even Academy Award credentials couldn't save celebrities who monopolized airtime without providing entertainment value. Heston treated every appearance like a congressional hearing. When Carson asked about injuries during chariot sequences, Heston would lean back and reminisce about childhood ranching, Yale theatrical training, and artistic risk philosophy before arriving at the broken rib story 5 minutes later. The breaking point came during a 1987 discussion about movie violence, where Heston launched into a 15-minute dissertation about freedom and constitutional rights. Carson's patience snapped. "He's operating his own program within my program, and it's not entertaining." The ban was immediate and decisive. "He's a magnificent actor, and likely a decent person," Carson told his booking representative. "But he treats every question like his cue for the Gettysburg Address." These 7 banishments, Geller's deception, Chase's hubris, Newton's intimidation, Hope's commercialism, Rickles's destruction, Rogers's pacing, and Heston's lectures, reveal the hidden psychology of television's most powerful host. Carson understood that his show's success depended on maintaining specific standards, and he possessed the strength to enforce them regardless of celebrity status or public opinion. The bans transmitted a clear message throughout Hollywood. The Tonight Show maintained standards, and violating them meant permanent exile from television's most prestigious stage. But more importantly, they reveal Carson's true genius, his ability to recognize when entertainment became destruction, and his willingness to protect his empire at any cost. This is the hidden art of hosting, knowing when to smile, when to strike, and when to declare, "never again." Carson mastered all 3, which is why he remained king of late night for 30 years, and why his influence extended far beyond comedy into the very structure of how Hollywood operates. The 7 guests who crossed him learned the hard way that behind America's most beloved entertainer was a businessman who never forgot that television, above all else, was about control.